Jeff and Jeremy in the Morning podcast brought to you commercial-free by another podcast. You've subscribed to ours, now subscribe to theirs. It's the Slow County Real Estate Podcast with Hal Swayze. When you're done with this, go listen to something that will actually enrich your life. California DRE 01111911.
Hey, welcome into Friday. Thanks for hanging out. Jeff and Jeremy here. Dan Dow, the prosecutor, the attorney. Double D
getting up in here.
Coming in. He's the district attorney, by the way. And he's coming in to talk about an event, but this is good timing because Jeff may be in some legal trouble.
Yeah. Maybe you don't want to refer to him as Double D.
It's up to you.
Yeah. Jury duty.
Okay, can you take us back and tell us how you got into this mess? Because it's not like he just got the jury duty thing. He's way into it now.
Yeah, I've had it on my refrigerator for a few weeks, and then Sunday I started calling as they asked to, and they said, "Oh, okay, call back tomorrow after 5:30. Call back tomorrow after 5:30." Tuesday they say, "Call back after 5:30," or no, they say, "Call back tomorrow between." And then my kids start screaming and I can't hear what's going on. And they're like, and then it says 12:30. I hear the 12:30 part, but I don't hear what anything else is. And I'm like, well, maybe they meant call back after 12:30. So I'll call back after 12:30 because it doesn't say, if you miss this message, push here to repeat this message, which is a pretty important component of the jury duty selection process. If you want to have the biggest possible pool, know that there are, in this day and age, dead areas in the county in which cell phone signals drop out all the time. So if I'm calling up and it drops out at that time and I hear it's 12:30, I'm going to be like, okay, I got to call back after 12:30 because I've been trained like Pavlov's dog for the last 3 days to call back after 5:30, after a certain time. I call back on Wednesday afternoon at 3:00 because that's after 12:30, right? That's when I'm not busy doing stuff. I'm like, okay, I got to call. It's after, I set a timer on my phone and it went off at 12:40 and I didn't get around to it till 3. So my bad on that one. It says, you're supposed to report to jury duty today at 1. And I'm like, what do I do now? Now I'm trying to get a hold of these people and say, hey, what do? I don't know what to do now. I don't want to go to jail. I don't want to get a fine. They threaten the crap out of you when you get this postcard that's been sitting on my refrigerator for 4 weeks, 5 weeks, whatever it is. And now I'm scared. And then you tell me, this is a surprise, by the way. I didn't see this. I guess it was on the calendar. But Dan Dow's coming in here. You're talking about the DA for the county is coming in here, and I'm a jury skipper. What do they call that?
Dodger?
Dodger, a jury dodger.
Like a draft dodger?
Exactly. I'd rather be a Los Angeles Dodger.
Okay, so you're blaming it on your kids, which is just lame. I wouldn't do that when he comes in, but it's up to you.
Well, why don't I? Well, no, I'm going to be honest and I'm going to be transparent because I'm learning a lot from our new government. They're honest and transparent. They make mistakes and they tell people that they make mistakes. I make mistakes and I'm going to tell them that I make mistakes. I think that there is something that we can all take away from everything that's been happening.
Asking for forgiveness is a good thing and admitting that you were wrong.
It's not, and it's nice not to have things hidden. Right. You know, you're like, okay, it is what it is. So I'm going to be honest about it. And
maybe he can make a call if they have a bench warrant out for you.
But what happens if it drops out? What happens if the cell?
I got him right here. I'll bring him in myself.
Cell service drops out on that situation.
Sure. Then people call back.
Give me an option to repeat.
You could have called back.
You call back to talk to somebody, and it says, "Sorry, all our employees are busy," and then it just hangs up on you. Call back later. It says, "Call back later," and
you can't just call the number you called to get the message to begin with.
You can't get in a queue. You call that number, and it says, "If you want to talk to somebody, hit 0." Then you hit 0, and it says, "Sorry, everybody's busy. Call back later," and then it hangs up on you. This is a very government phone tree thing.
There is nothing that boils my blood more than when you call somebody for assistance, and then like, "Sorry, we're all busy right now." And you get that.
You have to have an option to leave a message or get into a queue. I don't care what you're doing. If you're going to have a phone tree, leave an option to leave a message or get into the queue.
District Attorney Dan Dow is coming in. There's a Victim Awareness Month happening in April, and they have an event planned for that, so that's what he's coming in to talk about. But I have a feeling that Jeff's going to try to talk him out of jail, prison. What do you get for dodging jury duty? A fine, or do they actually?
No, and that's another thing where they're vague. That's another thing where they're vague. They're like, you could face a fine or even jail time.
Is it Dan or Daniel, by the way?
Dan.
Any guy that walks in with a suit, and a tie, I want to call Daniel. You know what I mean? I just like it's hard for me to say Dan. Dan, nice to meet you. Before we get into talking about Crime Victims' Rights and Awareness Month, which is very important, something has recently happened in the last 24 to 48 hours, and Jeff may be in trouble. He got jury duty call. They had him call back. I always tell him, and you could tell me if this is good advice or not, but I say don't call because as soon as you call, now they've got
to tell you that's good advice.
Now they have a record of you calling, and now they know you know. It's not like it got lost. You got no excuse now. So yesterday he was supposed to show up at 1 o'clock, but he missed his call.
What happened was you call on Sunday after 5:30, and they say, "Oh no, we'll put you off." Then on Monday, you call after, "Oh no, call back tomorrow after 5:30."
Right.
Tuesday, they said, "Call back," and then there was chaos in my house as I'm listening to the recording, and it says, "Call back," and then I heard 12:30. And I was like, oh, okay.
Chaos in my house. Who's ever used that? But chaos in my house.
No, the kids are running around screaming. I think there was something said before 12:30. I don't know. And I was like, okay, well, I guess I just call back after 12:30 because it didn't give me an option on the phone tree.
That's right.
To listen to to repeat the message. So I was like, I guess I'll just call back after 12:30. So I called at 3 yesterday. And they said I was supposed to report at 1.
A little hard to do at 3.
Yeah, right. I don't have a time machine.
Did you see those 2 guys in suits and sunglasses outside with me? They're waiting for you as soon as the show's over.
What happens in that instance? Seriously, I'm a bit concerned.
You should be concerned. Mm-hmm. We want people to come in and do their civic duty. Because
I've done it, by the way.
Justice system.
Just so you know, I served. Yep, I did.
Jeremy likes it. He's like kind of a court pervert. Like he gets he watches a lot of court TV.
It's interesting.
And People's Court and all that stuff. I mean, his
Judge Judy actually. More
job.
Judge Judy than anything else. But yeah, I'm also a big fan of Live PD, On Patrol Live. So yeah, I appreciate it all.
He does like to the point where he does ride-arounds with police officers and stuff.
I have in the past. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's a good
so
thing.
So can we lock Jeff up? Can I ride along as we take him to jail?
I will see what I can do. And, after the end of this interview, depends on how it goes. If it goes well, maybe I'll exercise my discretion not to have him arrested. But
I don't know if this is going to go well because
maybe we should play a song then, Jeff, and you can go get him a coffee or something. Maybe.
I tried to call back today to square it up, right? And I went to talk to the coordinator, and it says, "Oh, everybody's busy right now." And then they said, "Try calling back later on." So I just keep trying to call back later on.
Keep calling.
How many times?
Until they say you're released, because the last call you call in after you punch in your number, they will say your services are no longer required. Something like that. It will actually change.
It said my time has passed. And we're transferring you to the jury coordinator.
That sounds very permanent.
Like what? I'm always on call? I got to call. Now I've got to call every day for a year because my kids went crazy and I didn't hear them say whatever they said in 12:30.
Well, I think you should be very concerned.
Let me help you out, Dan. Listen, Jeff, if you think you're the only one that has a kid and has chaos in their house, you would be mistaken, my friend. All right, that's not an excuse.
No, I'm not saying it's an excuse, but it would have been nice to have an option to repeat the message. They did not give me that option.
Well, I can't take responsibility. That's all on the court, the jury commissioner. And I've even, I get summoned every year. I end up having to go down and sit and wait. Sometimes I call and they say you're not needed at all, so I don't go down. But I've gone down and sat in the group of a couple hundred jurors, and they make me do that until the judge excuses me. So But that being said, as long as we had enough jurors and they were able to seat the number without you, probably no harm, no foul. But but we really want to encourage the public to come in. And I appreciate the fact that you did call. I think some people blow it off when they get the postcard and they don't even bother to call, and that's where we really have a problem.
Right,
with it.
because if everybody did that, then
that's right.
There would never be anything settled. It was interesting because when I called, I called, and every other time I've ever gotten it, I've called and I gotten to that point. They're usually say, "Oh, we don't need to come in," and then that's the 12:30 message when my kids were screaming.
Yes,
threw me for a loop. And I was like, okay, I'll call back tomorrow.
All right, listen, this is getting pathetic. The excuses. Listen,
it seemed weird to call after 12:30.
I'm going to help you out here. We're going to play a song. We're going to come back with District Attorney Dan Dell. We're going to talk about National Crime Victims Month. There's an event happening that the city is throwing. You're not getting out of this.
Digging a hole.
Just show up,
subject, Jeremy.
or just shut up.
This was actually a plan, Dan. I was going to dig myself into a huge hole, and Jeremy was going to be like, "Okay, if it looks bad, I'm just going to change the subject to crime victims' rights."
National Crime Victims Month. It gets underway all of April, and on April 3rd at the Asajian building, the Cacho Asajian Government Center building on 1055 Monterey Street, they're having an event. If you missed it, get to the podcast. You can check it out. It starts at 11 o'clock. Dan will be speaking there. They're going to bring up some victims, plus some other organizations like CAPSLO and the Chief of Police.
I wanted to just ask you quickly, Prop 36.
Yes.
How has it changed California?
Almost immediately, we saw that it was working. People so it went into effect on December 18th. 2 weeks later, we already had 4 new felony theft cases in our courts, and they were heard exclaiming out loud, "That's a felony now? If I had known that, I wouldn't have done that." And since then, we've had more than 26 felony theft cases that have been prosecuted in the last 90 days, 93 felony drug cases. Now, mind you, this isn't just somebody who's never had a case in front of the court before. Mm-hmm. You can only get to a felony if you have 2 prior convictions for a misdemeanor drug possession or a misdemeanor theft conviction. And so Prop 36 was structured to give us some teeth back into the law, because people were picking up 5, 10, 15 misdemeanor cases, never showing up to court, not being held accountable, and we never could elevate it to a felony. But now we have some tools, and your first felony, after having 2 prior misdemeanor drug cases, your first felony is only eligible to go to county jail up to a year, up to 3 years technically. But before that can happen, you're given mandatory treatment. And so the real goal of this legislation by the people was to get people into treatment, because they stopped going to treatment after it became a non-felony. Mm-hmm. Get them into treatment, and if they succeed at their treatment, then their felony that they just pled to can actually go away and be expunged and not be on their record. If they fail numerous times, then they could be sentenced to do a significant custody time in county jail. And then on their second felony, so after having 3 convictions, 2 misdemeanors, 1 felony, on their second felony drug offense, they'll be given another opportunity for treatment. This time, if they fail and don't take advantage of it, then they could end up in state prison. But we're giving people a lot of off-ramps, a lot of ways to protect their record, and trying to give them an incentive to get into our treatment programs.
It sounds like the best of all worlds, really. I mean, because it's focusing on the problem from a health perspective.
Yes, absolutely.
And then a community safety perspective as well.
And, I've been told over the years since I've been a prosecutor, I just walk to lunch or something, and somebody will drive up beside me, roll down their window, and say, "Hey, Dan, thank you for putting me in jail and prosecuting me for that offense before. I'm now clean and sober." They'll tell me how many days or months they're clean and sober. And literally they'll say, "It took that for me to get to the point where I knew I had to take advantage."
That's got to be a great feeling.
It really is. That's some of the best feeling you can have as a prosecutor.
Really cool.
What do the other people say?
We can't say those words on the air.
Nice.
I've had those too, but
have your jury coordinator answer the phone.
Yeah, some other people have used some other expletives, but But it really is rewarding, and it's great. And I've heard from my staff as well. It's not just me. And the ones I mentioned are usually, cases that I had handled before I was DA, that people are still telling me, hey, thanks for what you did to intervene. And I hear from my staff that are younger and newer prosecutors that they're getting that same message. And so I think what people out in the public often think about the prosecutors is that we're just, we're tough and we're mean and we just want to send people to jail or prison. That's not true. What we want to have first happen is truth. Mm-hmm. If the person is innocent, we want that to come out. Truly. We don't want a conviction if they're innocent. We want to have the truth come out. If they're guilty, we want guilt to come out of the other end of the process. Mm-hmm. And then to have an appropriate, customized sentence for them based on their prior history, the seriousness of this offense, and what would be appropriate in our culture and in our society as a payment for that crime that they committed.
Well, I think we say thank you too, because I think the judicial process is probably one of the most important ones that we have in this country because of the objectiveness of it. Yeah. It's great. It's really cool, and success for the voters that voted for Prop 36 and was one of them. And it sounds like it's at least the early prospects are it's gonna pan out a little bit better.
It really is. And you got another thing coming?
No, that's my daily reminder to call jury duty.
Very good. Well, I was going to say on that note about how successful it's been, I got a handwritten letter from John Spencer at Spencer's Fresh Markets, unsolicited. I don't know John well. I've met him in the community, but he sent me a letter to thank us for promoting Prop 36. His grocery stores had seen a huge spike in theft crime over the last 10 years. And he said almost immediately within the first few weeks of the implementation, December 18th of this Prop 36, they saw theft in their stores go down to almost nothing. Wow. And so it's having an effect. The offenders are learning about it. And believe it or not, when they hear that they can get away with it, they're going to try to get away with it, which is what they've done for 10 years.
Yeah. And so, especially in the last several years, it seems like all these smash and grabs and all these terrible things that have been happening, and nobody's really doing anything about it. It's good to see that California stepped up and they're doing something about it now. And
very bipartisan. To get 70% of California, there were a lot of blue, a lot of red voters that joined together on this.
Well, great to have you. Don't forget about the event coming up on the 3rd. It starts at 11 o'clock at the Akajian. I don't know how to say his last name. Asajian?
Yes.
Yeah. Asajian Government Building. 1055 Monterey.
Can I tell you, I know a big fan of yours. She actually works just outside of my office. She's my assistant. Her name is Nancy. Can we say hello to Nancy?
Yeah, absolutely. We love Nancy.
Yes, say hi.
Anybody who's a big fan of us keeps us employed. So.
Absolutely. No, she is. And she does amazing work. She was a victim advocate in our office before she became my assistant. Oh. And back to this victim thing. She was dealing with victims and would tell them and empathize with them about their frustration of going through this process, which is what our crime victims rights awareness is all about. She would say, well, they don't call it the they don't call it the victim justice system. They call it the criminal justice system. So because of her explaining to me that there's this subtle, hidden intent in the words that we use to describe the system, every time the legislature wants to reform it, they reform it in favor of the criminal, the offender. And so in our office, because of Nancy's bringing it to my attention, and across the state now more and more, we're calling it the criminal and victim justice system.
Yeah.
And so Nancy was the person that came up with that, shared it with me, and we've adopted it.
It's brilliant because, it's telling two sides of the story in the title.
Jeff and Jeremy in the Morning podcast brought to you commercial free by another podcast. You've subscribed to ours, now subscribe to theirs. It's the SLO County Real Estate Podcast with Hal Swayze. When you're done with this, go listen to something that will actually enrich your life. California DRE 01111 911.